Section 15 of Weird Tales presents Mad Science. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Weird Tales presents Mad Science. Dr. Jerbot's Last Experiment by Granville S. Hoss. An uncanny story of communication with the brain of a man who was buried, by the author of The Man Who Thought He Was Dead. My end is approaching, and by the time these lines reach the public, I, Dr. William Mepherson Jerbot, will be numbered among the dead. I am slowly dying of a loathsome disease contracted from a cadaver which passed through my hands in the course of my work. It will not be long now, only a few days at best. I had intended making public what is to follow during my lifetime, but had not the courage. While I have been before the public virtually all my life, as practicing physician and director of surgical research in one of our great foundations, yet I have always been curiously timid in the face of ridicule of any sort, and to have made public the results of this, my last experiment, would have required a courage I did not possess. I would have been branded as a lunatic. Not believing that any good can come from a repetition of the experiment, I shall not go into details regarding the construction of the instruments used, but shall confine myself to a mere statement of what occurred. Aside from my bare word, I have nothing to offer in support of what follows, but I think that should have some weight. My life has been a long one, given entirely to the search for knowledge, and I have never reached a conclusion without having weighty evidence in support of it. I think this statement has been demonstrated by the fact that none of the published results of my labours has ever been successfully disputed. Most readers will remember the name of Professor Octavius Boehmer, who for 40 years was associated with me in all my works and who died a decade ago. His loss to the scientific world was great, and to me personally, a staggering blow. We had become close indeed during all those years. Neither had a thought which was not shared by the other. Our work lay chiefly in the realm of the physical sciences. We studied the reactions of animate and inanimate life, so ably investigated by Professor Bose of Calcutta. Some of our results would astonish that great investigator should he be more acquainted with them. Our work in experimental surgery developed many facts hitherto undreamed of. We considered mind to be physical, just as much as a sight, feeling, smell, etc. We were thoroughly material and had no patience with physical research and the phenomenon it attempted to explain, with just one exception, thought interference or mental telepathy. Our interest in this will be clear to you from what I have said above, that we considered mind as purely physical. Therefore any mental phenomenon would be physical and the proper study of a materialistic investigator and not of a ghost hunter. We devoted considerable time to telepathic experiments along the lines followed by the Society for Physical Research, but with results not very startling, and to us quite inconclusive, so we began our work along entirely different lines. Thoughts are things, was our argument, physical in all respects, just as speech or any other bodily attribute. So why may they not be made to react with an audible sound, like the voice over the telephone? Our efforts to produce instruments for this purpose, which would record our thoughts in audible sounds, met with failure after failure, making us wonder if after all we were wrong and should never succeed. But after years of discouragement we finally met with partial success. It was then only a question of a little more time. In the end we produced 2 finished instruments, very small, which fitted into the ear of the user and were almost invisible. With one of these little receivers fitted into the ears of each, Professor Boehmer and I would converse readily without a word being uttered. Those mentophones, as we called them, would not record every conscious thought, but when an effort was made to reach the understanding of the recipient, as in the telepathic experiments, the result was everything that should be desired. In addressing me, Professor Boehmer would merely concentrate and speak mentally instead of by word of mouth. Clear as a bell, and just as a spoken voice's thought would sound in my ear, my reply, of course, was given in the same manner. For several years after all this our attention was given to experimental surgery. One cold November night we sat in our library before the fire, discussing our day's work. "Jerbot," said Professor Boehmer, "I do not know whether your conclusions are similar to mine or not, but observation leads me to believe that the brain and in fact all parts of the body continue to function after death, imperceptibly as regards the purely bodily organs, but I believe the brain functions just as in life, at least for a time." "Yes," I answered, "the possibility has occurred to me. In fact I have given it considerable thought." We both then dropped into silence, each occupied with his own thoughts. The clock striking midnight roused me with a start to find Professor Boehmer gazing intently in my direction. "Jerbot," he said sharply, "one of us shall prove it." "Prove what?" I returned, my thoughts still wandering. "Why, that the brain functions after death, the possibility of which we were just now discussing." "Oh, that," I replied. "We shall both either prove it or disprove it." "No, only one of us." I want to exact a promise of you, and I shall make you the same one in return." "What is the promise?" "It is this, Jerbot, that if I should die before you, you'll place one of our little mentophones, as we call them, in my ear, that you will equip yourself with the other one, come to my grave within 12 hours after burial, and attempt to open communication with me. Do you promise?" "But why wait until after burial, Bomber? Why not at once upon death being ascertained?" "No, no! Wait! Do just as I tell you. Come within 12 hours after the grave is closed. I know best. You shall see. Do you promise?" "Yes, I promise. But do not talk of death, Bomber. You and I have years of work laid out for us. Why, man, we can't afford to die." "No, no, of course not. But who knows? I simply want to be prepared. And, Jerbot, my body is not to be embalmed. Good night." "Good night," I responded, and walked slowly to my room. Bomber's words had upset me. But why should they? My attention had simply been drawn to a disagreeable contingency which was bound to happen sooner or later. One of us would some time be left to continue our work alone. It was long ere I found repose. It must have been along toward morning before I fell into a heavy sleep, from which I was roused by a furious pounding on my door. My first thought was that the house must be afire, but collecting myself I sat up in bed, and shouted, "What's the matter? Who is it?" I could scarcely recognise the voice which answered as that of Johnson, our laboratory assistant. "Quick, quick! Come at once, Dr. Jerbot! Professor Bomber is dead!" This communication, coming so soon after our conversation of the night before, shocked me beyond measure. I sat in bed, staring dumbly at the door for a few seconds, until roused by Johnson's voice again. "Did you hear me, Doctor? Professor Bomber is dead!" Getting out of bed and hurrying into my bathrobe, I unlocked and threw open the door, where Johnson stood with ashen face and staring eyes. "Where is he?" I asked. "In his room?" "No, in the library, sitting before the fire." Johnson led the way, and I followed to the library door, where we both stopped. Yes, there he sat, dear old Bomber, as if resting and gazing absently into the dead embers. He must have returned to the library after I retired, as he left at the same time I did, going in the direction of his bedroom. Stepping softly forward, I placed my hand upon his wrist. It was quite cold. He must have died shortly after our last conversation. Could he, I thought, have had an inkling of this? But no, that is too absurd. It was his heart, of course, and although he knew it was bad, we had both expected him, with proper care, to last for years, and he had been careful, very careful. "There is nothing that can be done for him," I said, turning to Johnson. "We must remove him to his bedroom." And we did, laying him gently on the bed. I drew a sheet over the still form, and we both left the room. I shall not describe how keenly I felt my loss, how my mind wandered back over the long years of my association with Professor Bomber, from our school days to our conversation of the night before. I shall get on with the rest of my story. There is not much more now to relate. Professor Bomber had not a living relative, so the funeral was held the next day, with myself the only mourner. When the grave closed over his coffin, the only friend I possessed on earth was hidden from my sight, forever. I returned home with a heavy heart, and wondered if I would ever resume the work broken off by the death of my associate. As it turned out, I never did except at spasmodic intervals. I was so shaken by what I shall now detail that I have never been equal to concentrated effort since. Returning home on that dark November day through light snow flurries and a howling wind, I seated myself in the library, where a roaring fire had been kindled, and gazed sadly at Professor Bomber's empty chair. I thought of our conversation on the night of his death, and the promise exacted of me. I would fulfil it that evening, I decided. Nothing can come of it, I thought. It is too improbable, too grotesque, too awful. Well, I would keep my promise to my friend anyway, so that evening, after fitting the little mentophone into my ear, I made my way to the cemetery. Before burial I had placed the other one in the ear of Professor Bomber. It was a blustery evening with a chill north wind that howled through the trees, dying into a low wail. On reaching the grave I stood undecided, with a queer feeling, as if I was committing some unhallowed deed. How I wished my old friend had not exacted that promise of me. Finally, taking a long breath, I concentrated my mind on the following question. "Bomber, Bomber, do you hear me? Bomber, Bomber." After a few seconds, except for the wailing of the wind, all was silence. Then clear as a living voice came the reply in my ear. "Yes, Jerbot, I hear you. Yes, yes." I felt stunned and sick, but rallying my wits answered, "Bomber, are you alive? Have we buried you prematurely? Shall I bring the sexton?" No, Jerbot, no, I am dead. You can do nothing. I could stand no more, and turned and fled as if pursued by an unnameable thing. On reaching home, bright with electric lights and a cheerful fire, I was able to regain some composure. What did I run from? Nothing but a new-made grave which enclosed my only friend. What had happened? Simply a confirmation of what Professor Bomber and I had both suspected, that the brain functioned after death. I now understood why he had insisted that the mentaphone experiment should not be made until after burial. I do not believe I should have allowed him to be taken in the grave had it been made before. Poor Bomber, I thought. I shall go back. But no. I decided to wait until the next evening, when my nerves would be in better shape for the ordeal. For ordeal it was. The next evening at about the same hour I again approached the grave. The sky was still overcast, and the wind blew fitfully. Now remember that all my questions and the conversations that followed were mental ones, while the replies, which would have been inaudible to a person standing at my side, sounded in my ear through the mentaphone like a spoken voice. For a few minutes I stood looking down at the grave, hardly knowing where to begin, but finally said, "Bomber, Bomber, I am here again." "Yes, yes, Jerbot," came the reply. "Is there nothing I can do, Bomber? This is awful." "No, no, nothing." "Have you any feeling? Are you conscious? It seems terrible. Is it certain there is nothing I can do?" "No, no, nothing. I tell you, nothing. I am all right. Death is not unpleasant. I've never lost consciousness. Just a feeling of lethargic ease, as if nothing will ever matter and all will be well." "But your soul! If it still remains in the body, you must be alive. Alive, man, alive!" "Soul? No, there is no soul here, Jerbot. Just life, consciousness. But it is hard to explain. I would not make you understand." "Has your soul left your body?" "No, I think not. But you could not understand." "But you said there was no soul there. It must have left then." "No, no, Jerbot. You will know some day. Yes, yes, you will know. Not now, though, Jerbot. Not now." I turned and left the grave, my thoughts in a whirl. What could he have meant? Did he mean that his soul had flown or was still in the body? That there was no soul, or that he did not know? I felt sick and upset after this, and it was a week before I again visited the grave. The weather had changed, and the day was sunshiny and mild when I again stood beside my friend's grave. "Bomber," I said, "I'm here." The answer came, but very faint. "Yes, Jerbot, yes." "Are you at peace, Bomber? Is there nothing at all I can do?" "No, no, nothing. I am dead. Dissolution is set in, and I shall soon be gone. Yes, soon be gone, Jerbot, soon be gone. All in peace, peace and quiet, Jerbot. Nothing matters." "Is your soul still in the body? Is it leaving as dissolution advances? Has it gone?" "No, no. No soul, Jerbot. I don't know. I don't know. You'll understand some day." I felt a nausea stealing over me and returned home as quickly as possible. How I wished the promise had never been exacted, or that I had not kept it. I felt I should never know another moment of peace. I had never dreamed how horrible it would be should our conjecture prove true. My nights were a long nightmare. My days were spent with but a single thought. Another week passed before I again visited the grave of Professor Bomber. For the last time. Again I stood irresolute, finally calling as before, "Bomber, Bomber, I am here." I waited, but no reply. "Bomber," I repeated, "Bomber, Bomber, I am here." After an interval the reply came, but oh, so faint, a mere whisper in my ear. "Yes, Jerbot, yes, yes." "Is all well, Bomber?" "All well, yes, yes, all well. I am going, Jerbot, am going. Oblivion, Jerbot, complete rest, all well." "And your soul, Bomber?" "Soul? Yes, yes. Soul? No, no. I don't know, but it—" The whisper ceased. I called frantically, becoming so wrought up as to forget myself and shout, but got no further reply. Dissolution had triumphed. That virile brain had become food for the worms, and its animating intelligence had gone. Where? Or had it been blotted out? End of section 15. Read by Inkel.